Good evening and welcome to the Late Late Show with me, Irish Tommy. Just going to move that a little bit. Thanks all for joining. As you can thumbnail, we're going to get into the bizarre happenings with Declan Rice's move or not to Arsenal. Still hasn't happened, bizarrely, and we'll get into that shortly. So we're just going to see who's in the house first. Early doors, straight in. Happy Hammerette with the early goal. How you doing? Evening to you. Forgive me in advance, KOC, if that's wrong. I apologize. Feel free to put in the chat how to pronounce that properly. Not my forte. Howard Ailes, how are you, bud? Good to see you. Thanks for joining. Got Lincoln Harper in here as well. Just everyone saying good evening. John Osborne, aka Verge. How you doing, Verge? Verge, let me know if you want to pop on for a chat. Always good to hear your views. Be happy to have you jump on, but you might be sitting in your taxi waiting for a fare. I don't know, but maybe you're at work. I'm not sure what your Friday evening's like. Some of Arsenal trying to shop in Harrods, don't have the money for Primark. Yeah, we're going to get into that. Sorry, now it's jumped down on me. So let me get back on track here. Surreal in the house. How you doing, mate? How you keeping? I'm keeping well, except a couple of days ago at work, I absolutely fucked my back. So I've been in so much pain in the last couple of days. I've pulled muscles right on the bottom of my back. I do a lot of manual lifting. Oh man, it was unbelievably painful. It's still really sore. So I've thankfully got quite a comfy chair, but I'll hang in there tonight as long as I can. But if it gets too painful sitting in this chair, then I'm gonna have to end the stream eventually. Lincoln, where's the money at? Yeah, that's a good question. I think they're furiously checking behind all their couches, trying to dig it up, I think. Also got Michael Snooks, great name. Love this channel. We love you too, Michael. And thanks for joining us. Friend Pete, Tommy, how are you? See you above. I'm good, apart from my back. See who else? Howard, we've already seen, and your friend we've seen. CF Blade, how you all doing? Hope everybody is well. Also got Steve, the Grimshaw. You sound like Grimshaw. You sound like that could be like one of those horror movies. You know, like you could be some like fucked up creature of the night. Like I could see like a horror movie called The Grimshaw. You know, in theaters this June. How's Mikey? Even American transfer dealings should be shown live on Comedy Central. They might show it if we had any. Not much happening at the moment, boys. I'm also going to have someone's going to be joining me, special guest soon. You'll all know him. But he'll be joining me as soon as he can. He'll pop on for a while. Let's see who else is in here. Jay Bogue. Rice completed his medical. Should go through. He completed his medical last Friday. He completed it a week ago. Sorry, mate. London, 4th Emergency Service. Yeah, figured you might be working, mate. Yeah, got to make that money. Drainhole. Drainhole's with us. Hello, fella. How's it going? Chat. Tommy, good to see you, mate. Thanks for joining. Howard, we've already spoken to. Rhonda and Tony Tanti. Good morning, Tony. Can't wait to watch the kids play Perth tonight. Oh, yeah, you're in Oz. So, yeah, that must be an absolute buzz, for you to be over there and be able to go see the team play and hopefully, get a little meet and greet with some of the players. It'll be fantastic for you. So happy for you all over there in Oz. It's not an opportunity that comes your way very often, so very happy for you. Kenley, try all another day and more lies and deception from Arsenal. Yeah, we're going to get into that in a second with my special guest because I'm sure he'll have plenty to say. So, without further ado, let's get him in. You all know him. He is Gonzo. How are you doing, mate?
I'm all right. You in the toilet?
No, I'm not. I'm actually in my kitchen. I'm actually gonna sort out a proper place to do this.
It sounded echoey. I didn't know if you was having a Donald Trump.
That I should do that sometime.
You should. Hey, no one else is doing it. You always got to freshen things up, keep it new.
Yeah, you're really good at coming up with the little dirty names on your preview shows for games. So I'll have to get you to come up with a name for my show. when I'm sitting on the bog. So
a Brad Pitt with Tommy. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. Good to see you, mate. Listen, appreciate you jumping on.
Mate, nice to see you always, mate. Always.
So obviously, look, the talk of the town at the moment is this bizarre Declan Rice to Arsenal deal, which for some reason is still not completed. I mean, he obviously, look, there were some negotiations that were going on with the price and with the structure of the deal, as expected. Nothing unusual in that. And these kinds of negotiations happen all the time, particularly with big money deals.
Yeah.
And it looked like it was all done and dusted. Everything had been agreed between the two clubs. Rice has gone and done his medical. He's passed it. That was a week ago. And yet, no name on the dotted line. Now, the story from Arsenal is quite vague. Is that, the contract details have been sent off to their lawyers and they were poring it over. And apparently they're still poring it over. A very strange situation, mate. And it's hard to know what exactly the issue is here. I mean, what do you think's going on there?
I think reading between the lines, I wanted to have a look the other day, so I thought I'll have a little look into it. So had a look at Kroenke and had a look at his holding company and their assets, and they are vast. And then I started, you know what Google's like. The moment you start looking at something, it starts saying, "Oh, you might be interested in this and this and this and this," and it offered more information to me. So he's got Denver Nuggets, Colorado Avalanche, someone else as well. It's very easy to see that Arsenal, I think, are not top of the list of his priorities. That much is clear. But all of them were getting funding as well. I reading between the lines, he seems to have a team of people that do all of it. So whereas you might have West Ham get a deal done, and everyone's got to pass their paperwork for a legal team, but West Ham have got a legal team in the same way that almost every other club have got a legal team. I think we're dealing with pretty standard documents as well, by the way. So if it's West Ham, choose your club. If it's West Ham dealing with Sunderland, all right, not great. There you go. One example. You've got two English-based teams who are probably used to passing this paperwork over from one another. I don't think it's a big document, by the way. I don't think this stuff is like that thick. I think you're looking at 6 to 10 pages of this stuff. It's pretty industry standard stuff. I think it gets sent over, and you're just dealing with that. I think what Arsenal have probably got, by the looks of it, is they've probably got the Kroenke Group's set of lawyers who not only are they looking over this stuff, they're looking at the NBA stuff, they're looking at the NHL stuff, they're looking at all this other stuff. And I think probably there's a certain level of surprise, incompetence, whatever. I don't think there's anything particularly naughty going on here, because I'm pretty sure that Arteta's probably putting pressure on them and saying, "Oh, why would Arteta's been really, really pushing for this player? Why would he get to this point and then say, oh, actually, no, I'll wait a little while longer?" I think you've got a situation where he's probably doing it. I wouldn't call it incompetence, because far be it from me to call someone that's a lawyer incompetent. But I don't think they're well versed in this sort of stuff particularly. The question would be why were they able to get the Havertz deal over the line so quickly? I would suggest that with Todd Bowley that they're probably dealing with exactly the same kinds of people. So I think it will get done. I think it will get done hopefully very, very soon. Now I'm certainly not worried about it at all. But and I certainly don't think they're particularly paying. I know what the suggestion is, because they're so pissed off that we had this, we got such a good deal. They're going to make us wait for our money. I mean, it's schoolyard stuff, isn't it? Do you know what I mean?
It is, yeah.
They're dealing with much bigger amounts of money. Have you seen some of the money that these gridiron players are on and these baseball stars? It's very easy for us. I think it's nice for Arsenal to think that they're the biggest and most important thing to bloody what's his name, Stan Kroenke. They're not, and I think it's very easy for us to think, our money at 100 million is sort of the be all and end all. In American terms, it ain't even that much money.
Yeah, I think the difference is because I follow NFL very closely.
Okay.
I've done for a lot of years, and the deals are structured very differently. So, say with an NFL player in America, there will be a certain amount of the money in their contract guaranteed. Yeah. So let's say the contract is worth $200 million over the course of the contract. You might have 100 million or 80 million of that guaranteed money. So that's the very least the player will come away with, and the rest then is incentivized. So the deals in America are very different and highly incentivized.
Yeah.
Whereas here, that's all guaranteed money. That's and it's different because the transfers are very different as well here. So they don't buy players from each other in America.
No.
It's just a completely different system. So as you say, I mean, if this is, American lawyers who are used to dealing with transfers between American sports franchises and contracts for American sports stars, they're completely different ball game, completely different kettle of fish. And they have a salary cap. So they always know exactly where they stand with how much they can and can't give to certain players, or how much they're willing to give or not give to certain players. FFP obviously is a completely different setup as well.
Sure.
So, I
can read what Ken's saying there, and I tell you, Ken, I don't like Arsenal, right? I don't, even more so in recent times. Having to go on the internet every day and deal with their fans through this Declan Rice saga is not pleasant. They're a bit of a different breed, really, and they're very internet based. I'm sure their match going fans are fine. You know what I mean? They're dyed in the wool fans, but their internet fans are very, very keyboard warrior-ish. But I don't think, I know what you're saying, like lies and deception from Arsenal. I don't think we're dealing with Arsenal anymore. I think the moment that paperwork left Arsenal's hands, I think you are now dealing with the holding company, which is an American holding company, which has sports franchises. I think that's the problem. That's why the deal the back and forth took so long. Because this we do know from Sullivan. Sullivan was saying he was having to wait until very, very late to get it done. Basically, they were saying, well, we can do this negotiation, but you're going to do it on American time. And that's what was happening. And so, I think it's sort of different for all concerned. I mean, we're all going to be pleased when it's done, aren't we? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Obviously, the other suggestion going around on Twitter, really this one more from West Ham fans than Arsenal fans, is that there's some kind of FFP issue here. I'd have my doubts about that personally. I think Arsenal will have known all along exactly where this end on FFP. And, I think if this deal for Rice was going to cause them any kind of major issue, short or long term, on their FFP, I don't suspect they would have put themselves in any hot water. What do you think about the FFP suggestions?
Well, I think there's probably numerous ways around it. If that was going to be their issue, then, I certainly, we went to them with, I don't know who the two, I think of Mill Smith Rowe was one of them. There was meant to be 2 or 3 players. If that was their major concern, and the only way they were going to do business was going to be by trading a player, they would have traded a player, and that would have kept them down and kept them under FFP. The thing is, I've seen this as well, and sometimes you just got to take a broader view of it. So the thing is that actually Arteta wants him, but the club won't give it to him. I'll tell you now, ever since Arteta dealt with Mesut Ozil and Aubameyang, Arteta gets what Arteta wants at Arsenal. So if Arteta would be totally able to say, do you know what? If what they want is to get this deal done, if what we got to do is 60 million and Kieran Tierney, to use an example, then do it. All right. And that's a bad example, but choose your player. He would have done that. They would have kept him under the FFP. He definitely wanted Rice more than Havertz. If they were that bothered about it, they would have signed Rice first and Havertz second, I think, as well. I think you're seeing that with the way they're going on. Is it the Ajax? The Ajax guy they're trying to sign as well.
Timber, is it?
Yeah.
I think they've got him.
They've got him already, have they?
Yeah, I believe that's basically in the bag. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the article that I read was that all these sports franchises are pretty much getting a $250 million injection anyway. These people,
they'll probably offset these signings with some sales. I mean, they'll probably move Xhaka and Partey on. Yeah, they might sell someone like Tomiyasu or something like that, or who.
And they're not incompetent. Actually, they're very, very bright. These people. You can only see, look by what Todd Bowley's doing. He might not be best at picking a manager, but they can be very, very creative in the way they buy and sell players. So yeah, I don't. It's it's easy to look for a smoking gun, but sometimes there isn't one. Sometimes it is just take a lot. It's just I think there's too many middlemen in it, and I think that's probably what we're doing. There's not normally that many middlemen. You've got them additional lawyers, an additional holding company, then add in the agents as well. I bet Declan's frustrated. I really bet he is. But yeah, I think we've done the right thing in terms of had that suggested a couple of times that maybe we pushed too hard. No. He was right to try and get 100 million and get it paid over the period he wanted it paid him.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a position of strength, I think, there, and we played our hand very well.
Yeah.
Apparently, Karen Brady took the lead on this negotiation.
Yeah, I've heard. I wouldn't know, but I've heard that said. Yeah.
Yeah, so fair to whoever it was, fair play. I think they've got a very good deal, about as much as we could realistically have expected for Rice, and the payments over a very short period. I think 33 million paid up front, which is a lot. It's a high percentage for.
And the second 33 million is we don't even have to wait 12 months for it. It's sort of like paid 11 months and 3 weeks afterwards. So yeah, it's we were getting 100 million in 24 months, I believe. So. That's
unprecedented, really. I think.
The only thing I can think of, funny enough, when we were on the receiving end, was Sebastian Haller with Frankfurt, where we had to pay them over 2 years.
Yeah, so it's a great deal, and I think that will get done tomorrow. I believe Arsenal have told the club that look, this will be done and dusted tomorrow, signed, sealed, and delivered. So I think Declan Rice will be an Arsenal player tomorrow, and thank God. I mean, it's just.
Well, their fans are annoyed as well, So we're annoyed, but they've got their own separate set of stuff, So yeah, they're angry with they're angry with their club now, But hey, look, everyone's angry.
Arsenal fans are. I mean, we think our fans can be reactive, but Jesus, Arsenal fans are 10 times worse. So.
Honestly, different grade.
Yeah. I've seen the way they speak about Edu. Anytime a deal has any little stumbling block or anything like that, I mean, they absolutely go to town on Edu.
They turn on anyone. I look at them as well, and I look at like their fan cams, and they're aggressive. They talk over each other. They push in. They point. Whereas you look at West Ham fan TV, people sort of they wait for the next day, wait in line, they wait their turn, they wait for the person to speak. It's sort of orderly. And as a sort of microcosm as how the two fan bases behave, I think that's it. It's like the Wild West there, really. And they're even the fan cam stuff. They're 10 times worse online. It's it's mental. It's mental. You just think, wow, sort of glad we're not like that. And I couldn't even see us being anything like that as a fan base. We're nothing. Look at it, as I say. Look at any of the respective fan cams after, and you'll see what I mean. It's like a baying. Honestly, a baying mob. But the only thing they're missing is pitchforks.
Yeah, they're a different breed. It must be said. But I suppose the West Ham side of this whole arrangement also is very frustrating for us. I mean, it's hard to know exactly what our situation is financially. Is it a case of, and there may be a bit of both, of course. On the one hand, is it that the Declan Rice money essentially is the money that we've got to spend? Or is it a case of, well, we're just going to keep our powder dry until we know for certain that Declan Rice money is coming and that Rice has gone, so that now we know we do need to replace Rice? Obviously, there's a big difference in the kind of players we're going to focus on, depending on whether we need to replace Rice or not. So if the deal fell through and Rice ended up staying at West Ham, obviously that completely changes the scenery, really. And so I'm not surprised particularly that we've not been busy in the transfer market yet. But I'd imagine, once this Rice deal goes through, hopefully tomorrow, that all of a sudden we'll probably see a flurry of activity.
Yeah, and they're either very stupid or very sure of that they're going to get their targets, that they could wait. I think that's the thing. And I know the easy thing to say is everyone's very stupid, but if everyone was very stupid, there would have been no Paqueta deal done. There would have been all that stuff don't get done. You don't sign Tilo Kehrer I know I might not be everybody's favourite player, but you don't sign a couple of players from PSG like we did. You don't get Scamacca. You don't get these deals done. So someone within there knows how to do a deal. And now it seems somebody knows how. So someone knows how to buy players. Now it seems like someone knows how to sell players. Then we brought Steiten in as well. What role? We don't know. We're all guessing at the moment. But But I think it's a bizarre thing to behold, Tommy, to be perfectly honest with you, the whole thing. Because does seem utter frustration from so many people about so many things. And there's sort of no off season anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. But I suppose you'd like to think that, well, we may not have made any bids, that we've been busy on the telephone.
I hope so.
With clubs, with agents, with players,
Yeah.
so that, once this Rice deal is rubber stamped, we've got a lot of the legwork done, and we can actually get straight down to throwing some bids in. That we've already spoken to a lot of people, that we've kind of done, as I say, a lot of the legwork, and we're ready to go in. We know who we want. They know we want them. Their clubs know we want them. We've been talking money. We've been talking contracts. And hopefully when Rice goes, then we'll actually start to see some solid bids going in immediately. I mean, that would be the prudent thing.
Well, I hope so. I think the one thing that I do think we do badly, one of the things that we do badly is we chase players that aren't interested. And I hope we get that out of our system. And I heard the other day, and I don't automatically believe everything, but I heard the other day we've made another bid for Phillips. So, God, I hope not. He clearly doesn't want to play for West Ham, which is fine. But the big story is Jesse Lingard, but he wasn't the only one. We do tend to chase these players. And it's not.
Yeah, I remember you and Gio talking ad nauseum about En-Nesyri over and over, and it was just this constant links with En-Nesyri. How many times did we try to sign Batshuayi?
It's a great example, Tommy. Actually, yeah.
He must have turned us down about 4 times, didn't he?
Exactly, which tells you everything you need to know. Do you know what I mean? Wouldn't do it in a nightclub with a girl, would you? Do you know what I mean? You'd be off with your tail between your legs. Well, probably something else between your legs. Anyway, sorry, bad joke. Shouldn't be doing that. But no, it's
Yeah, or you'd probably have a restraining order for harassment.
You probably would. Jesse Lingard, can someone get David Moyes on my lawn?
Yeah, just David Moyes peering in my window. I'm trying to watch Love Island. We've got David Moyes knocking on the window, and I've told him piss off.
Yeah,
but yeah.
So I hope that. The one thing I do, by that I don't mean I don't like the thing about us making unrealistic. When people say, "Oh, that's unrealistic," you got to try for Phillips, try for Rafinha, try. But once you get a no, don't bloody keep going back. So I hope there's that. I have a hope. Actually, the video I'm doing tomorrow, actually, the start of the day is about Harvey Barnes. Actually, I'm hoping there's a glimmer there. I think, to preempt my video, I think Newcastle get transfer deals done.
Yeah.
What we that's a hard one. So I try and sometimes just think, hold on, what's the most common sense thing? What, the Newcastle are taking 2 weeks to do a transfer? They don't, do they? Normally, they're pretty swift, So I do wonder if we still get that player,
Yeah, I mean, look, he's still a Leicester City player as we speak, and clearly nothing is happening very quickly. I haven't heard anything very recently about Barnes to Newcastle.
No.
So I don't know we don't know what's gone on there, whether it's a dead deal now or what. But if there's a deal there to be done, we should absolutely throw a hat in the ring.
Oh, and they can afford him.
Yeah,
we know that.
Yeah, and you do suspect that he would be a Moyes player. That he seems like the kind of player that Moyes would like.
Oh, for sure. And you get the FFP. I mean, it's used a lot for a lot of things. I don't think Newcastle have got any worries with FFP. I think they can spend what they want. If not, they can get a little bit creative and do what they want. They can use Saudi Arabia because, let's be fair, that's unregulated at the moment. So if they want to use that to their advantage, then they absolutely can do that as well.
Yeah,
I mean, they can even let it.
You suspect if they really had to, they could dig up a major sponsor somewhere.
Of course, they'll dig up a major sponsor. I mean, do not be, and nothing would surprise me. Cristiano Ronaldo turning up on loan in January. Newcastle would not surprise me at all.
For 6 months. Just for 6 months, so they can still sell £50 million worth of shirts.
There's so many ways that they can be creative, or they can just do a Man City, which is have so many. We talked about lawyers at the start of the show. So many lawyers. Man City have got this thing hanging over them. They've got it tied up. There's 100. I think they've got 150 charges. Man City have been very, very clever. They've gone to deal with the 150 charges individually, legally. They've got this thing tied up. They're not even be able to do anything, honestly, anything, until they think this stuff might not be seen properly until the end of the decade. That is called tying someone up in legal tape. So, there's lots of things that lots of people can do. If Newcastle really want Harvey Barnes, Newcastle can have Harvey Barnes yesterday. So I'm maybe I'm clutching at straws there, but
No, I think we have a case to make. We're a good club. I know we didn't have a great season in the Prem last season, but it will have left an impression on players that we won a European trophy, that we're in the Europa League next season. They know we've got some very good players there. So, we've got a case to make, and we should make
100%.
it. I mean, I think we'd be an attractive proposition for Harvey Barnes.
I agree. And for the majority of players, not Jude Bellingham's and stuff like that, granted. But I started having a I said it in a video earlier on, and somebody, said back in the comments, what makes you think we'd be seen as an attractive club? And you just made one of the points there. We will be perceived to be in Europe as having semi-finals and then winning a final. That'll be, our kudos will be up there. Our UEFA coefficients will be very, very high anyway. Everyone in the continent will be aware of Tim Steiden as a director of football, so they'll know he's here. Yeah. We've all got our gripes about the stadium, we really do. But believe you me, if you're buying a player from Italy and Germany and France, they don't care that they're 10 a penny stadiums with tracks around them. They're just looking at it and seeing a bloody big stadium. They're seeing it in London. Yeah. They're seeing it in London as well. And when I actually started to think about clubs, Premier League, huge. And clubs in Europe that have got more money to spend than West Ham United. Forget Premier League, but this would be the same for most Premier League teams. PSG, Bayern Munich, Real. You can't even say Real Madrid anymore because they can't buy Bellingham and someone else. I mean, I would be surprised if there are 5 clubs on the continent who can spend more than West Ham. And that's what you're dealing with. I think for those reasons, I do think
and there's actually a lot of clubs. Not only do they not have any buying power, they're under financial strain. They've got to ship players out, and they've got to sell players at prices they would not particularly like to sell them at. All things being equal. So I think there's great deals to be done on the continent. Where you can get players cheaper than you ought to be getting them. From clubs who really kind of just have to take the money and have to just accept that the player is gone.
But if we accept that that's the landscape, and I do think that's that, what we then need is the manager that's going to accept that actually, do you know what? I don't see one bit of evidence that suggests to me that David Moyes really wants James Ward-Prowse. But I suspect he does. I've just not seen any evidence. I think he probably does. It makes sense to me. But it's for him to accept that a director of football can just say, there's better value than that. If that's what you want, if what you want is someone that's a bit box to box and a free kick taker, I can get you one of those for 40 grand a week and for 9 million from Union Berlin or whatever the case may be. It's very important. So I do think we're in a good position. I do think that money can be stretched far. I do think players think, West Ham, Conference League champions, big stadium, all the stuff. But a coach has to be open to it. The coach has to be able to say, do you know what? I will take your recommendation for a right back and I'll play him. And that's the final thing, I think.
Yeah, and my understanding is that Moyes has the power of veto over any signing also. So, I think it's a case of, look, Moyes is not going to have heard of many of these players that Steidham has got on his list. So he's going to have to convince him, that this player is worth bringing in. And it's not like he's never done it. I think he was convinced. You have to remind me who it was. Someone had convinced him about Thomas Souček.
Yeah, Jordan Miles convinced him about Thomas Souček.
Yeah, and Moyes had no clue who Thomas Souček was, but Moyes had intimated he needs this kind of player, and Miles said to him, "Look, I know the exact player, at Sparta Prague, and this Thomas Souček is going to be cheap." And Moyes took a chance. He said, "All right, let's give it a go and see what he's like," and brought him in. Of course, he loves him. He loves him now. So Moyes has done it before, taking a chance on a player that's been recommended to him by someone he trusts. It's just a case of Stidham. I still don't know how to pronounce it. Excuse me, but I'm just going to call him Tim. So Tim has to kind of get a good working relationship with Moyes, and he has to show Moyes that he can trust that he's got good players. That he can identify, and that he can identify these good players. His track record speaks for itself. I mean,
Yeah, I think so much of it comes down to Sullivan.
To lose that much control, as it were, and like take a punt.
Listen, and I would understand that from Moyes' point of view. If Moyes just couldn't relinquish it, maybe he did the thing with Jordan Miles, because you know what, Jordan Miles was just a scout, and actually I can take that off him because he's not telling me what to do. If there's some ambiguity about whether or not Moyes is the boss or whether Steiton's the boss, maybe that grates on Moyes. If you are used to being the number one guy, I can absolutely understand that, right? Why Moyes would push back on that. But if that is the case, then that's why it all comes down to Sullivan, because it's for Sullivan to have honest conversations and honest appraisals and say, I want to move the club forward in this way. David, you've got 1 more year left on your contract. I'm very uneasy about letting you go, bearing in mind you just won us a trophy. However, this is the direction I want the club to go. Are you going to be able to operate from within this system, which is just the way football is going? And so basically the question is, can Moyes, is the umbilical cord so great to Moyes' idea of the traditional manager, the Sir Alex Ferguson model, that he's going to be incapable of just changing for the last year of his contract? Because actually, I would suggest the fortune lies ahead for Moyes if he could change. Because actually, if he could show that he could change, he could work with director of football and take his players and actually transition at the latter part of his life into a more modern coach, then he may well get a new contract. But if he's going to push against it and rally against it and resist it, then there's only going to be one loser, and I think it's David Moyes, and he don't see his contract out. But this is where it's really important for Sullivan to read the room. And this is nothing to do with being a chairman or anything else. This is just about knowing people. Because we've got to read the room, and the room is Sullivan, Noble, Steiton, and Moyes. And he's got to sit there in that room. That's why it's important it is a room, not just a bloody Zoom call. And actually look at it and think, is everyone getting on here? And you've got to be able to pick up on all that small stuff. What you're seeing is angst, and you're seeing frustration, and you're sensing that people aren't gelling. You have to deal with it because the cost is too great. The football club is too big as an entity to allow like personal feuds to develop and stuff like that. You're basically going to want to hire, if that is the committee, you as the chairman are going to have to sit back and not overly get involved. What you need is the manager, the technical director, and the football director to get on like a bloody house on fire. You want those people finishing each other's sentences. That's what you bloody want, not them, smacking up against each other. So I mean, the dynamic is wonderful. We can never know. We can never know what happens. We just got to hope it's good.
Yeah, we'll probably only find that out when somebody leaves the club and kind of spills the beans, really. And it also, of course, begs the question of where does this leave Rob Newman?
I know for a fact that Sullivan never rated him or wanted him. So
we all know it was Moyes really that pressed for him to be employed, and he essentially worked for David Moyes, which is just a bizarre situation for head of scouting and recruitment to work for the manager.
The Paqueta deal didn't help because they couldn't get it over the line. So in the end, Sullivan had to shoehorn had to parachute Barry Silkman in to get the deal over the line because they couldn't get it done. And that's absolutely what happened. And it wasn't a great look because it was a great look for Silky. It was really, agent extraordinaire and all the rest of it. It was probably a good look for Sullivan. And okay, well, you were struggling with that. I got my guy in, and he got the deal over the line. Silkman in Paqueta's kitchen grinning like a Cheshire cat. but
I'm
it
sure he
wasn't.
was. I'm sure he got a nice little fee out of that one.
Oh, no doubt about that. Yeah, not bad, eh? But
Yeah.
things like that. We talk about confirmation bias all the time, Tommy.
Yeah.
If already you're thinking this guy can't quite do the job, and then you're seeing he can't get a transfer deal over the line, and I tell you, he was reluctantly brought in, Silkman. By the way, it's not. There's some things that aren't harmonious at that club, and this is almost the biggest job of all. That's what I'm saying, is to get an infrastructure in there that is harmonious, where you don't want infighting in the club. Everyone's got to be horrible, bloody cliche, but everyone's got to be pulling in the same direction. They really do, and everyone's got to have a shared path for the club.
Yeah, and I think it's also going to be important for Sullivan that where it's not working, that he has to allow certain heads to roll.
For sure.
Make sure to get things back on track if they're out of kilter.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he can be utterly ruthless. But I think there's a good quality in giving Moyes a chance. That last season, that was as good as it gets. As a West Ham fan, that's as good as it gets. There's a lot to be grateful for there. So I understand, all right, you've given us our first bit of glory in a long, long time. I totally understand why Sullivan would do that. But there's a line between doing that and then thinking, okay, at what point does my gratitude start impacting how I want the club to go forward? And I think, that's where he's got to draw the line, Tommy. He really does. So, and only he can do that because he's the only one in the room. And you talk about ruthlessness. If it comes a point, so actually they cannot marry. Basically, as I wouldn't ask Stuyton to change. I wouldn't. You're bringing him in. He's the new guy. I wouldn't ask Stuyton, actually, can you change your style a little bit to incorporate an old school manager? No, I wouldn't be doing that. That'd be saying to David Moyes, can you do a Roy Hodgson? Because, crikey, how old is that guy? Do you know what I mean? And you know what? He's got the humility. He can come in. He can do it. And he's, he's saying, do you know what? I'll do whatever. I'll operate under whatever system. Moyes got to be. I don't feel there's very much time for him if he can't bend.
Yeah, completely agree on that. James, welcome. I don't know how familiar you and Gonzo are with each other.
I'm absolutely. Hello, mate.
How you doing, Gonzo? I hope you're
all right, mate. Yeah, thank you. You?
Yes, I'm very good, mate. Very good.
It's good.
I would like West Ham to sign some players. It would help. Like, we would brighten our days up, nevertheless. But it is what it is at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, well, hopefully that's coming very soon. Yeah, I'm sure you just heard what we were saying. You were in the green room there, James. It's kind of all up in the air at the moment when it comes to transfers. We don't know who's calling the shots, who's calling which shots.
Yeah.
How much power does Tim have? How much power does Moyes have? Who else is in the room? Sullivan, likes to kind of stick his nose into these things. I don't know if he's back from holiday off his yacht or whatever, but he'll want to have his opinions and he'll want to surprise the manager with a player here and there if he can. And
yeah.
It's hard to know really what the dynamic is, and if Sullivan gets this wrong, then it could be just a complete disaster.
I'm nervous, mate. I'm nervous about this season because you're trying to restructure West Ham in one season. You're trying to bring all these people in, or hope they work together. You put a lot of stress on Stuyton to get it done right. I'm nervous, mate. Trust me. And I look at West Ham at the minute that we're not changing our spots. It's a scattergun approach again. They're throwing out loads of names everywhere. There's no plan. Let's be honest, dear gentlemen. Yeah, we've known Declan Rice was going to leave for the last 6 months to a year. Yeah, they should already have someone identified, but West Ham haven't. And again, after people like James Ward-Prowse, which, listen, whether you like Ward-Prowse or not, he should not be the replacement for Declan Rice. Like, West Ham should have identified this person who they're going for, and they really haven't at the minute. And I heard what you were saying about there's too many cooks. Like, you got Sullivan, you got Moyes, you got Noble, you got Stuyton. Like, you got all these lads, and if they all disagree on a player, then we're never going to get nowhere. So I am nervous this year. I really am.
Yeah, and actually that brings me to just another thing I wanted to run by you, actually, both. Replacing staff. We've lost two more. Obviously, you Gio had Mark Warburton
Yeah.
on Gio. Very, very interesting show, particularly when you read between the lines.
Yeah.
A very interesting interview. Lost him. And now we've lost
Nevin.
He's gone to France. So now, presumably, this is something we knew was coming too. I would imagine that we would have had some kind of heads up from both of them. That look, at the end of the season, I just feel like, maybe it's best for me to move on and try something else. And yet here we are, still with no replacements for them either. We're already in pre-season. We've got the players on the training ground, playing pre-season friendlies, and we still have these two vacancies. It's just strange. I don't know, why have we still not replaced these two men? I mean, it's very important positions at the club that they both held. This wasn't like, you need to bring in a new sous chef for the kitchen. I mean, this is, there's an assistant manager who's gone here, and probably Moyes' most trusted person that was left at the club in Nevin, I would say. Whenever you saw Moyes talking on the sideline, it was usually Nevin that he was, who was in his ear, and they were having a chat about what was going on the pitch and stuff. And so he was obviously very trusted by Moyes, and to still not have replaced them is very strange. I mean, we've got to get someone in, either promote people from within or have people come in. I mean, it's not like we're still in the season. We have to wait for the end of the season for people to finish up the season with the clubs they're at before we can bring them in. I mean, surely there are good people available that Moyes' the club have already asked to come in and fulfill those roles. Why have we not replaced them yet, Gonzo?
Well, I wouldn't. I'm trying really hard this season not to make any assumptions, right? Because I think that's the easy thing to do. So I would not assume that we have had foreknotice of this. I've worked in enough companies in my time to know that people hand their notice in at the very last minute and don't give people due notice for one really good reason, as they feel awkward. It's awkward. It's awkward to tell people 6 months before you're leaving that you're leaving. You change the dynamic of it. So I also think they're two very separate things. I don't think Warburton is, as well as he spoke, I don't think he's a massive loss. I don't think Moyes incorporated him very well. So I do think Nevin is the loss. But yeah, it would not surprise me at all if actually Moyes himself, because it is an awkward thing. I'd imagine he's an awkward guy to talk to, Moyes. I mean, he's a bit of a scary guy, to be fair. I wouldn't want to tell him something he'd be disappointed with, regardless I was a journalist or I was, working alongside him. It would be etched across his face if he was really disappointed. Not that I think he's going to hit you or anything, but, he's not a guy that you'd probably comfortable disappointed. You probably would wait. If what you've got to give is 2 weeks notice, you'd probably give 2 weeks notice. That's what I'm saying. Maybe that job came out late. Anyway, that's by the by. I just think that's maybe why we haven't done it. I think what is straight away, what is probably more concerning is that Steve Round is available and that Steve Round wasn't like that. And the reason that's disturbing is because one of them is basically saying, I understand what people are like by not wanting to upset the apple cart. So I also understand what people are like when they like people. And Steve Round is meant to be a confidant of David Moyes. He's meant to be somebody he has worked alongside him before. That you would expect Moyes to be able to say, I need your help here, Steve. We know that he wanted him when he first came on the second stint at West Ham. He wanted Steve Round there. That concerns me more than anything. There's no doubt about it. We are light on staff out in Australia at the moment. But again, we're out in bloody Australia, so what are they going to do? I don't mind them being in Australia, by the way. I think it's the best place for them. But who's going to appoint? I think the question is who's going to appoint the bloody staff? That's the thing.
Agree. Absolutely agree. Like you just said, you're absolutely spot on, Gonzo. Like, who is going to appoint them? And who's going to have to trust in coming to West Ham, seeing all the staff members who's left, like Pierce, Irvine, Warburton, everyone. Do you know what I mean? Who's really going to put their job, and their sort of reputation to come to West Ham to work with Moyes in a way to go, if this don't work, I'm going to be out the door or handing my P45 in somewhere else. Do you know what I'm saying? So I agree. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, what James just said there, that is far more of, I think, of a relevant and important and concerning point than a lot of the other things that we've heard. I think there's maybe easy explanations. Why haven't we signed anyone in? Because we only have the Declan money. That's not come in. Okay, so let's get and sign some players. But that there is the thing, because that's not even, a lot of it we're having to guess what conversations we have, guess that we don't have to guess. It does not look good. You can actually imagine what it looks like if you're a coach. What are you going to do? Sign on? David Moyes only got 12 months left on his contract. What, just signing with Steve Round said, well, to be fair, Dave, if Steve Round saying to be fair, Dave would come back and help you out, mate. Got 1 year left on your deal. I'm looking for something a little bit more than that. The first team coaches are not multi-millionaires. These are not footballers. They're not. They probably, it's easy to think everyone in football is a multi-millionaire. I'm not sure they are. So actually, for a coach, the difference between a year's contract and a 4-year contract is probably bloody whopping. There's a difference between what makes a bloody massive difference to just, paying for your house, basically.
See, what you just said there, yeah, just to come in on that, is I'll make you 100% spot on there. Where the 1 year left, that's the fear that all these sort of staff members are having at the minute. They're looking at it and they're going, you know what, I can't really commit there. Because if David Moyes starts bad this season and it does go bad at the start of the season and we're struggling again, I don't think Moyes will last till Christmas. I think Moyes will be gone before Christmas. And that's the fear when you got, there's no stability at West Ham at the minute. Everything seems to be all up in the air, all over the place. Like, if it ain't the staff members, it's the players. Like, it's certain things. And that is a major concern. Right? When you're trying to do everything at once, like, I can understand losing one staff member, you can get around that. But to lose sort of two, I know you say about Warburton and I agree, but Nevin was a big, voice in the ear of David Moyes, and not to have him there is a massive blow.
Yeah,
you wonder as well about players as well. I know it's not as big an issue for a player as it is for a coach, but I think maybe with the coaching issue, I think maybe that's why it might be more prudent to kind of hire from within the club. Maybe give those positions to people who are already here. If you're struggling to find people from outside who are willing to come in with David Moyes' position so precarious.
But do they become yes men, though, Tommy? Because basically,
I think they all are, essentially.
But no one's going to challenge Moyes in a way. I think Nevin would have challenged Moyes to a point. I don't know about Warburton, but Nevin definitely would have said stuff like if he didn't agree with something. Do you know what I'm saying? But if you're going to hire within the camp, then they're going to literally do as they're told, aren't they? Really?
Because they're grateful.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah, I think that would still be the case to a large extent with anyone he kind of brought in himself. It's probably someone he knows very well already, has worked with before. They'd probably be just as grateful, especially if they're out of work. So it's hard to say, but I think there are probably other frustrated coaches in the club, that are maybe not particularly happy.
I interviewed Mark Phillips 3 days ago. And who was obviously Kevin Key's assistant last season, and he's gone up to he's going to be Mark Noble's assistant now. And I've got to say, the feel is quite clear. I spoke to him on video and interviewed him and spoke to him privately as well. There's no doubt about it that there's a feel-good factor in the club. They're all still buzzing. They're not within the club. They're not as frustrated as the fan base is. So I think, to be fair, and because that's all you can do. That's one thing I'm not guessing. I've spoken to a coach very, very recently, and they do seem like a very motivated, happy bunch. They're particularly with people who've been working with the youth team and all the rest of it. They don't feel frustrated at all. So I'm not sure that's the case from within there. But I also think maybe David Moyes listens. It's easy to always think, there's enough sticks to beat David Moyes with. So just try and be as even as I can, because I don't want him there. I'd rather he wasn't. But I also don't want to, make things up about him and stuff like that. And I don't think he's as bad as we all think. There's that story about him not knowing who to play on the left wing and him turning around to Mark Noble. And it's Mark Noble's story. And he turned around to Mark Noble and said, who do you think I should play there? And Mark Noble said, why don't you give 4 hours ago? He's not done anything wrong. He plays all right in training. So, and there's been a couple of stories like that. So he is open to some ideas. So I don't think he's totally against it. But I do think that it would also be difficult for any coach to come in and have a real proper influence on David Moyes. And I do worry that there was a little opportunity for him to let himself go last season, and he tried and it failed. And I think that might have been that little confirmation. I tried that other stuff and it didn't work. So it's back to Moyes ball, and we'll now do it my way. And I do worry, and that's where I think ultimately the plan. I hope it's not flawed. I really do, and I absolutely hope I'm wrong. I hope they all get on really, really well, these people. But the system we're asking Moyes to operate in is a well-worked, well-proven system employed by almost every club across the land and in the continent. All right. But it's not just about a director of football, a technical director, and a coach. It's also about the president. And the trouble is, it's not just that we don't have a coach, we've got a manager instead. We also don't have a president. We've got a chairman instead. And I think it's the president is meant to be able to know everything, and the president will know who's meant to be coming in. And I think we've got this idea of this cog that makes all clubs work, and there's 4 cogs in, if you like, in the wheel, and we've just changed 2 of them. And I'm not sure how compatible everything's going to be with basically the 2 bookends, which is David Moyes and David Sullivan. With those at the helm, I just don't think we can fully modernise, although we're trying to do it. I just wonder if we're going to be like a car running on, I don't know how many more analogies I've got to do, but a car running on 3 cylinders. Do you know what I mean?
Which is a concern, though, isn't it? Like when you're trying to restructure West Ham, and let's be honest, David Moyes is a very stubborn man. Do you know what I'm saying? And what it is, we're between a rock and an hard place. On the one hand, he won us the conference, and we can all be grateful for that night on the 7th of June. But then now we're in a bit of a dilemma with the 1 year thing. Like giving this man a lot of money at his to play ball with, and for me, I think it's a dangerous game with the finances with it, because if he ain't here, then basically we're going to go out and sign players for him and not players for someone else, which could be a problem. But you've got to give him benefit of the doubt for last year, and just hope he changes, because if he don't, he's going to be out the door.
Yeah. No, and I just agree about the pace. You know, we need pace all over, and that's the other thing about allowing Moyes too much influence in bringing players in. If he brings more of his players in, I mean, when you first came in, James, you started talking about Ward-Prowse.
Yeah.
I'm very guilty of not wanting to believe stuff. Do you know what I mean? For instance, I couldn't believe that Sullivan hadn't got rid of David Moyes last season. I was thinking he must do it. Surely it's going to be tomorrow. That's what I was thinking. He's going to do it tomorrow. You know, he's going to do it in the World Cup. Okay, just after, he'll give him another game after the World Cup. I was thinking like that. Yeah. And it never actually happened. And this Ward-Prowse thing, you know that thing, don't judge people by your own standards. And I think, well, there's no way I'd play Polina and Ward-Prowse in midfield. I think we need an athlete. We need a runner. And particularly if you're going to play counter-attacking football. That's why I always, sometimes prefer Areola in goal, because he distributes it quickly. If you're going to do it, I don't mind us playing counter-attacking football. But if you're going to do it, make the team suited to that. I think my worry is, I still cling to the belief he won't sign Ward-Prowse, he won't sign Polina. So that's my thing, right? I think it's hopefully smokescreen. I'm going to be surprised. We're going to have these different players in the. I know it's probably naive. I understand that, but I think the biggest problem is if it does fail, and let's say that Steiten then says, right, we're going to bring in Xavi Alonso, for instance. Yeah. He's then got to utilise those players, and they're going to for most managers, the players that we're being linked with. It's a bit too static. Do you know what I mean?
And the thing is, I do agree with Clement and Booze. We do lack pace. Like, if we're playing a counter-attacking style, I want to see some runners from midfield. Like, Onana at Everton would be the man for me. Like, he was the one that we should have got last year, and because of his sister, I think it was, playing up with, like, at the last minute. Do you know what I'm saying? But he would be a sort of player that we need. We need people from midfield who can carry the ball out of, like, defence and get us up the pitch. Like, we haven't got enough ball carriers in the team. So we definitely need pace. Ward-Prowse, I'm not on the hype with Ward-Prowse, but if we sign him, then great. If not, I'm not going to be sort of bothered, if I'm being honest. But I do think we need pace, we need power in midfield. Because one thing with Declan Rice, and we all know he's going to go, is that when he used to pick the ball up, he could carry us up the pitch, and he could get us away from danger, and he could beat a man and move us like faster up the pitch. And I just don't think we're fast, especially in midfield. Like, and that's a major thing, especially with him going.
Yeah, I think it's important, with Royce going, it's important to get the balance right in midfield. And we have an opportunity to do it now. I agree with you, James. I'd like to see Rice replaced with just a straight up DM who's just going to shield the back four, and that's literally his only job. You sit in front of that back four and you shield it. Don't worry about getting up the pitch too much. You just sit back and protect.
Yeah.
And obviously we have Paqueta. We know what he can do. His role is already there. But I think the other midfielder of the three, the one I would replace Souček with, I agree with you, James. I think we need a powerful ball-carrying box-to-box midfielder.
Yeah.
Whether that's Onana or someone else. I think we need that balance. If we had that balance of those three, where we've got the sitting DM who shields the back four, that's his only job. Then we've got Paqueta who does what Paqueta does. You know, he brings the silky skills, the brilliant passing. He is a bit more of a free role, and he'll also work hard. He's not shy of he's not afraid to run. He likes a tackle. He'll get stuck in. But then the third one needs to be that kind of big, strong,
it has to be a statement
striding box midfielder who's powerful and can carry the ball forward. And I think that kind of balance, I think, would be quite a formidable midfield in Europe and in the Premier League. So it's about getting that balance right. And I
agree on that.
I like James Ward-Prowse, but just on the balance, I'm just not sure. I'd like someone in that position to replace Souček.
But he's not an athlete, Ward-Prowse. I think that's and what he's exceptional at, and it's all right having specialists in there. What he's exceptional at is it's almost like you say you like the gridiron, Tommy. It's like when the game stops and they bring on that specialist guy. He's a bit like that, isn't he? Really, actually, when the game's in open play. When the game's moving quickly, you either want to be good at running, to be able to travel with a ball well, to be able to pass really accurately over, that's not it. It's when the game stops. And he's like, listen, I think he's a decent enough player. I just think it lacks sort of fantasy, lacks imagination. The best one that I've seen that we were linked with, and I don't have a big knowledge of players in Europe, was when I looked at that, and I hadn't really thought about it much before. I think in hindsight, I had seen him play in the World Cup. I just hadn't really paid much attention. Was that Yunus Musa? Now, I look at someone like that, I think, well, okay, yeah, someone like that I think would do really well in our midfield. But again, you just don't know whether a crappy website has made that story up, whether we are genuinely interested. And that's why I find it hard. I'd love to get excited if we were genuinely interested. Even if we missed out, I think we're going to go for this player. It might be just something the agent's made up, because he used to play for Arsenal and he's technically a homegrown player. They link him with us. But
he's a good player. He's a good player, though, Gonzo. I will say I can vouch for that because I've seen him and he's local. He's from where I live. So, listen, Yunus Musa at 20 years old, being a trainee at Arsenal and going to Valencia, and he's only 20, and he's an USA international. I think that speaks volumes for a player that could get better. And I think for 20 million, 25 million, that is worth the punt, in my opinion, because you're building on someone who can stay for 5 years and he could develop. And if you want to sell him in the future, you're either going to get your money back or you're going to earn a profit on him. I think West Ham signing Ward-Prowse right now for 25 million, I don't think you're going to get that in 2 years' time because his value is just going to keep going down and down and down. So I do
the Red Bull model hasn't quite materialized yet, has it?
I bet he wishes he has. We all said things we wish we had said, but I bet he wishes he ain't bloody didn't say that one. Yeah.
He'd like to take that.
I bet he's not so bothered about the winning one now. He probably thinks, I've won a trophy. I can say the winning one. But yeah, I bet he wishes if we go back in time the Red Bull model. But yeah, there's a few of them.
Well, I suppose given all that, and it's hard to project, I know, but I'll start with you, Gonzo. What's your gut feeling for next season? Are you optimistic or pessimistic? Or are you just kind of blowing in the wind at the moment?
I am optimistic, but it's a sort of forced optimism, if you know what I mean. I think I was thinking about it. The other day, actually, and I like my boxing, my MMA, like a bit of cricket. Formula One, not so much. Become a bit processional, wasn't it, recently? But I like other sports. Put it that way. And this was your off time. And for everyone, regardless of whether you went home and away or you just went home, this was your off time. And I'm going back a little bit here. You had no choice. You couldn't even get a copy of OLAS. You could not get a copy of OLAS because it would only be there at the ground. So you'd have one little scroll around on CFAX and Teletext. So this would be your off time. All right. So actually all this stuff didn't matter. Plus there weren't transfer windows and all the rest of it. And West Ham was your life during the week, and particularly during the weekends, but you had big times. Now there's no off time. West Ham is your life all the time. And if you ever got one of those apps that tells you how much time you're spending on your phone, they're truly frightening. And if you actually be amazed at how much time you're spending looking at West Ham stuff. And if you're looking at West Ham stuff on your phone for 1 or 2 or 3 hours a day, believe you me, West Ham is your life. And because of that, you cannot switch off. So every minor story becomes so massively big. And there's so much. We're linked with so many players we can't possibly be linked with. There's so many stories about Moyes. There's so many stories about Sullivan. There's so many stories about Steidton. There's so many worries that players won't be at gel and all the rest of it. That Newcastle beat us to Harvey Barnes. That, there you go. Anana's sister is. Before that, Felipe Anderson's sister, something about people's sisters. There's all this. There's always a negative story. And I think sometimes you get all consumed with it. And I actually think to myself, hold on, this is my off time. Do you know what I mean? I want to try. And I am sort of, I said to you earlier, Tommy, about this is as good as it gets. Me and my son, a couple of weeks ago, took my son down to, and we went down to Paul Key, right down by the coast there. And we got some fish and chips. We had some fish and chips. We had an ice cream. The sun came out. The seagulls are going. The sea's lapping up. Anyway, I looked at him and he was like this. And I said, oh, hold on, mate. I said, listen, son, this is as good as it gets. Just to let you know, this is as good as life gets right now. Sat down on the beach with your ice cream, your fish and chips, not a care in the world. This is as good as it gets. If you're bored and you're miserable now, this is it. This is the pinnacle. And I sort of looked at last season. I thought, this is as good as it gets. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to be. I think the answer, long ass answer, Tommy. Sorry, I'm trying to be confident, but it is a very much a forced confidence with a lot of hope thrown in there. I really hope. My gut is what you asked. My gut thinks it'll be a reasonable season, actually, because the other part of me can't handle all that dread. Again, that stuff. Whenever it was October to November, and then all for the World Cup. Was terrible. I thought we were going to get relegated. Joe will tell you, I used to message him, do you think we're going down? I used to say to him, do you think we're going down? Do you think we're going down? And to be fair to him, he said no. The whole time he said no, but that's what I was thinking. Constantly trying to cling to some kind of promise, wondering why the team wouldn't attack, wondering why Moyes had signed these players and he didn't know what to do with them. There was so much stuff. I have to have faith that people learn their lessons, all right? And I have to. So I am reasonably confident that some of these transfer targets are smoke screens, and I think we've got a good player or two to sign this window, mate.
Yeah, well, let's hope the optimism is well placed. James,
I'm not convinced, mate. I'm nervous massively. I think, as we've discussed, the major restructuring of West Ham and the scattergun approach, it can only last you for so long. You're taking our best player out of the team, and you've got to bring in a new players. You've got to find a new captain. You've got to find new staff members. You've got a lot what's going on at West Ham right now, and it needs to be sorted out urgently, in my opinion. You don't want to be starting off like we did last year, and we're fighting uphill. If we're fighting uphill, Moyes won't be here for the rest of the season. He'll be gone by Christmas, and we can't have 20 defeats in the Premier League. That's another thing we can't have. Maybe
did we win like 2 away games?
Yeah, Villa was one of them.
And was it Villa and Bournemouth?
Villa and Bournemouth, yeah. So 20 defeats last season is not good enough. Like, I expect West Ham to be a top 10 club. Like, that's what I expect as a West Ham fan. And I don't think I'm being unreasonable there. We have 65,000 at home every other week. We go away. We take an army with us wherever we go. Like, it's an army of fans go up and down the land and across the world, basically. Do you know what I'm saying? And for me, I don't think I'm being unreasonable when I say top 10 is a must, like is a minimum, really. Do you know what I'm saying? So I am nervous about next season. I hope to God that they start kicking into gear, I think we need 5 or 6 players to sort of really boost this side up and make us sort of strong. If they do that and they sign quality, then I'll be happy. If they don't, then I'm nervous because I know what West Ham are like, and you boys know what West Ham are like. If they start slow, then we're struggling, then we're fighting to stay in the league, and it shouldn't be like that. It really shouldn't, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm worried as well. Mainly because of what I've seen from us in the Premier League these last 18 months, and then the failed attempt last season at Moyes to try a different style and be more progressive and more possession based, and just did not work whatsoever. It was a complete failure. Things improved a bit when he kind of got back to basic Moyes ball, but it still wasn't great. It's shocking to watch as well, frankly, which is unfortunate, because we've seen he's capable of better Moyes. Okay, his football was never particularly attractive or easy on the eye, but I'll be honest. I mean, that season we finished 6th, and the first half of the season we finished 7th. I actually was feeling very good about West Ham and what we were doing on the pitch. All right, it was never easy on the eye. Well, it wasn't, silky, smooth football. But I actually really enjoyed it when we were bullying teams.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it when we were in their face, getting stuck in, bullying them. When we were scoring, we were a nightmare from corners and set pieces in our opponent's half. Teams hated playing against us. Hated it. We were absolute bullies. And I loved every minute of that. I really enjoyed that they were afraid of us. It was nice to have teams, for a change, not talking about soft touch West Ham.
Yeah.
I liked that we were bullies and that they didn't like us putting it up on them. And we did every week. And that was what really was the foundation of the success that David Moyes had at West Ham, and that particularly in that season and a half, when we were absolutely flying it. So as much as I ideally prefer nice silky football, nice passing and movement, and ideally that's what I would like to see at West Ham. I actually really enjoyed it when we were like that under Moyes. That was actually very, very different for us. It was like, oh, this is a new West Ham. This is different. No one's walking all over us anymore.
Yeah.
We're no soft touch now. We're up in teams' faces and we're physical and we're getting after them, and they don't like it up them. And I quite enjoyed that about us.
I wonder what happened, Tommy.
That's the thing.
Because we were, to witness some of the things last season. You're absolutely right in everything you said. But last season we were a soft touch. Probably not just last season. End of the season leading up to it as well. But I wonder what stopped us competing. Of being those tough bully boys. Maybe we just ran so hard we couldn't keep it up.
I think for me, Gonzo, I think when you look at the Lingard effect.
Mm-hmm.
When he arrived, he had one man who was playing like probably the best football of his life, and he was just carrying us in certain games and certain moments. Like you can look at him and say, in that season when we did,
we were 6th when he came in. We were 4th. We were 4th in the table.
We was 4th, but like it was in a COVID. There was no fans in.
It gave us the extra boost. He definitely did, and his form.
Yeah,
but it was like Payet, wasn't it? It was it's the best 6-month loan I think I've ever seen in my life. Do you know what I mean? Someone who comes in and sort of like was scoring goals after goal, and really like the impact that he made was unreal. I think obviously having no fans in there, because at the time we had a lot of GSB out protests at the time. No fans could get in there. It just allowed the boys just to play, and it was all about West Ham. It was about nothing about them in or out or whatever. Yeah. But obviously, as time has gone on, I think Moyes has got to a stage where he just doesn't know his best team. He doesn't know his best system. And I think he went through so many systems last year to try and nullify the opponent, but not go to West Ham's strength. And like West Ham do need pace in the side. And that's the reason why they've got to sign pace this year. Because if you're going to play a counter-attacking side, you can't just have Jared Bowen as your one sort of pace merchant. And he ain't massive, if he'll face... I always say 5 or 6 fullbacks a year who will be as quick or quicker than him. So even I remember it happens every year. I remember 2 or 3 years ago, we played Watford. I remember doing the review with Gio and saying to Gio, do you know what? The 5 fastest players on the pitch are all Watford players. Well, where's our one? And sometimes, Fredericks wasn't the best footballer in the world, but you think, at least crikey, get him on a little bit and he'd do something. I totally agree with all that. And we definitely chased Lingard for too long. It was definitely a Lingard hangover. That much is true. It's a funny. I just think it's all about identity, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? It's almost like this halfway house. If David Moyes, we'll do it. If you are that old school manager, then stick to your guns. Do it. Just stick to it and build the team in your vision.
I think also he's got when he plays against top 6 sides away from home, like the way I've been brought up with West Ham is like you have a go, yeah, and and you go down fighting, and that is that's the old school way of doing it. Like if West Ham have a go and they really have a go at these top teams and they lose the game, you can walk out the ground or walk away and go, you know what, they've had a go, we can be proud. Certain games last year, West Ham used to just turn up there and was defending for their lives and trying to win it in 10 minutes, and for me, that's not what any of us want to see. You don't want to see West Ham trying to sit there and wait for the team to score. Like, I think I remember the game against Manchester United away, like, and for 75, 80 minutes of that game, we was getting literally pummeled. Like they scored, and in the last 10 minutes, we woke up and we had a go in the end. And then we only went down to 1-0. But it's still, when I look at other teams having a go at these teams, like I look at Brentford, I look at Brighton, they have a go at these teams, and they've got no fear. And it's like, we set up in a way to be scared of these teams when they should we should have the confidence to go, we've just won the Conference League. We've been in the Europa League the season before. We're back in the Europa League again. We should be going at these teams and going like, we're a big club. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I completely agree, Jay. That you're absolutely right. I mean, you cannot deny that for a moment that we are too cautious and we are too scared of the opposition. And you're absolutely right. It was the old West Ham. Yeah, actually, the old West Ham was that we'd bloody lose to Burnley and we beat the big teams.
Yeah.
He switched it around, didn't he?
100%.
Yeah, if you remember, I mean, I believe there was an incredible stat in that season. We finished 6th. I think we didn't lose to any team outside of the top 6. I think that season.
Yeah.
So look, we beat or drew with everybody. The other kind of like 14 or 13 teams that ended up finishing below us in the league. I don't think we lost to one of them. Did we that season?
I think if I got this right, also correct me if I'm wrong.
We got virtually nothing against the other 6, but all of our points came from those other 13. I mean, it was
if I got this right, we scored in every game at home when we finished 6th. Like, I think there's a stat for you. I'm sure of it because I remember someone saying to me, like, we scored in every game at home in that season that we did finish 6th. So if we're scoring goals in every game, then we've got half a chance of getting something, ain't we?
For sure.
You know what I mean? So when you're setting up in a negative way, and there was times before where I looked at Moyes and I think you're setting up in a 5-3-2, or people would say it's a 3-4-3, like with wing backs, but we all know deep down West Ham are going to be defending, so it's going to be a 5-3-2.
Yes.
So, and that is the problem. I think the way Moyes sort of ended the season with the 4-3-3, I like that. I've always have. I want power from midfield. I want us to get the ball and put balls over the top. Like, I don't know how many times West Ham last season didn't put balls through the middle. It was always down the sides, and you're trying to cross it into one man who's man marked, like big time. Do you know what I mean? With 2 defenders on him. So this season is a big one for Moyes for me. He has to get it spot on, otherwise he's going to be unemployed by Christmas.
Yeah, well, look, all we can do is wait and see what happens. Fingers crossed, that something happens this off-season and Moyes is able to figure some things out and kind of get it right and kind of restore the balance, as it were. I think we just lost our balance. He's never been an attack-minded coach, Moyes, but he was bloody good at setting teams up defensively and at hitting on the counter, at being physical, working the socks off and being really dangerous on set pieces. If he can find a way to get back to that, the old kind of proper Moyes football, it can be, and we've seen it, extremely effective. So if he can figure that out, because let's be honest, we're not going to come out next season all of a sudden be kind of playing like Man City, lots of possession and knocking the ball about lovely and all that stuff. Because I don't think Moyes really is capable of setting up a team that way. But if he can at least get back to getting us to play his way very, very effectively, then I think we'd all take that. We don't expect to look like Barcelona or Man City.
I think the first 2 games are massive, Tommy. If you want me to be really honest, I think Bournemouth away, you will know what West Ham are all about. West Ham should go there and turn Bournemouth over. Right?
Yeah,
we really should. Yeah, and then the next game is a London derby with Chelsea, right? And that's the sort of game that West Ham need. Like the second game of the season, you need a London derby to get the fans right up for it. First home game of the season against a London rival. So you're going to know really where West Ham are at. And obviously, the Luton game will be sort of coming up. That'll be their first game. That'll be another test for West Ham. Going to Luton Their first home game in the Premier League, like because their other games have been called off, and
We should still be beating them.
we should be.
Yeah, there's a
this
bit
is
of
West
history there, though, Tommy. To be fair with Luton,
Yeah, well, I know there is, but to be fair, I mean, I think Scott Oakes has retired, so it should be okay.
But like, you know what I'm saying? It's one of them ones where we're going to have to, West Ham are going to have to turn up at the start of the season and not like prolong it till like September the 1st and try and get loads of players in the last day of the window.
I think it's untenable. I don't think there's any tolerance, which is crazy. You think he's just on a trophy. Now you'd think that any circumstance would be a lot of credit in the bank. I don't think there's any.
Yeah,
I think there's no tolerance for it. I don't think he gets to lose 3 games. He would. He'd still keep his job. He'd be hanging on. I don't think he gets to lose 4 games in a row. But do you know what? I'd like to think. I don't think he will. And what I'm hoping is that actually the win is not only good for him in terms of history and be able to tell his granddaughter all about it. I hope it's good for him in terms of relaxing him a bit and his demeanour and not being quite so grumpy. I know he looks happy in Australia. I'm probably fucking happy. It's pretty easy to be happy in Australia, isn't it? We all would be happy in Australia with our
100%.
sandals on and our cocktails and all the rest of it. Lovely. But he seemed a little bit more relaxed. And I hope if it makes him a little less uptight and he can have a little bit more... Do you know what I mean? Just the win, he probably feels he's got a bit more credibility, that people look at him. He probably feels like a winner. And I'd be really pleased if that just allows him to get on with his job.
Let me ask you a question, Gonzo, then. So if basically we play 10 games, what's the minimum that he's got to do? Like, obviously, the maximum would be to win every single game, which ain't going to happen, right? But what's the minimum that he's got to do to sort of justify his job, basically?
After 10 games, I think if he's in... I don't think it's points. I think it's position in the league.
Yeah,
I think if he's... I don't know, if he's in the bottom 3, he's gone.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I was just thinking, would 15th do it? I'm not quite so sure. But see, the thing is, all the rest of the time that Sullivan would have had, which is I might have to call Rafa in emergency break glass sort of thing. He hasn't got that now. He's got this little, that little devil on your shoulder. It's going to be Tim Steidten. I'm not saying that he's a troublemaker, but I'm saying the option is there. Steidten, I can ring Xabi Alonso and I can get this sorted pretty damn quickly.
I think probably after 10 games, if he's kind of 14th or above, he'd probably be okay, because at that point the table will still be quite condensed.
Yeah,
and he'll be able to come out after a game and say, one win and we jumped 5 places.
I think also performances though, I
think it will come down to not being in a very bad position, as you say, Gonzo. I think if we're in the relegation zone, I think he will get the bullet. I think how we're playing will come into it too.
Yeah, and does he have excuses?
I think if we look terrible, if we're down near the foot of the table and we look terrible, I think that even if we're not in the relegation zone, I think there would maybe be enough alarm bells then if we're in, even 15th or 16th and playing horribly. I think that would be it for him.
I think it's a tricky situation with Moyes, right? Because obviously I agree. I don't want Moyes here. I wanted him sacked after the Leicester game last year, just before the World Cup.
Yeah.
But he's a sort of manager that if you're in a relegation sort of scrap, he's the sort of man that you want to get out of that. Do you know what I mean? But then you're in a catch-22, ain't you? Like, we want to progress. We want to go. I want West Ham to go up the league, and rather than be 14th or 15th.
I don't think that flies early in the season, James.
What do you mean?
I think early in the season, I don't think the kind of reason that Sullivan was given last season, after the new year, saying, well, if you wanted someone to come in and save you from a relegation fight, Moyes would be there. You can't say that in October. You just can't. There's way too much season left. You can't admit. I mean, how long did it take Moyes to even admit that we were in a relegation fight?
After Christmas. After.
Yeah, we all knew it early doors, but Moyes just wouldn't say it. We wouldn't admit, it's a relegation. We were down like the bottom of the table. He was talking about, our aim is to get into Europe.
You're right. Yeah, he did, didn't he?
Yeah, our aim is to qualify for Europe. I mean, it was an absolutely ridiculous thing to say. It's so that excuse won't fly in October.
I agree.
you know, if we're playing shit, you know, Sullivan can't come out and say, well, you know, Moyes is the man you'd want to get you out of a relegation fight. It's October.
No, there's
Why are
all
we
these other
talking
things
about
at play, though, that we're
relegation?
never going to know. So let's say Moyes, let's say Stuyton recommends a player, Moyes recommends another player, and they go with the Moyes one, and we're down near the bottom, and the Moyes one has flopped. Little things that we might not know about. That's going to play in massively. I've never got my head around. One thing I've never got my head around. I'm always saying, don't beat Moyes with a stick. You don't need to. There's enough there to beat him with it. And absolutely, what James said then, absolutely about not attacking the big teams and putting up the white flag. That's one of them. That's a really good one. But you know what? I've always wondered why he wasn't more culpable. If I was the boss, if I was the chairman is basically that. The meaning of the chairman is the guy that looks after the money. I don't think it'd be bothering me every day. I think I'd be getting up thinking about Vlasic and thinking about Haller and thinking about Felipe Anderson. Even I know he didn't buy Haller and Felipe Anderson, but you make something out of them. Do you know what I mean? Honestly, I'd be doing my nutting to watch Haller go
and if Scamacca is still not
exactly all of these, so it'd be
goals,
money. They'd be doing my head in. So I'd be looking at Moyes thinking, can he get me value for money? And I think for me, it would have motivated me so much that I probably would be saying now, right, Stuyton, I've got to allow this guy to buy some players. And I think what I want. So I think, let's say we buy 5 players, right? I'm making this completely up. Let's say we buy 5 players. Let's say Moyes is allowed to buy 2 and Stuyton's allowed to buy 3. What I want to see as the chairman is, don't you not play Stuyton's players. You play yours, but if what you've said is you need a right back, for example, or a left winger, and he's got you that one, but we got you the midfielder your choice, but actually the left winger is his choice, don't you leave him out and play Fornals just to spite him on the left wing. You played, and I think that's what I'd want to see. That's the stubbornness, I think, which is the bad stubbornness.
I agree 100,000% on that.
And of course, you know, it's always hard to know what the tipping point could be. It could be that, you know, we're not going very well, but not in the relegation zone, and then we get a tonking. You know, like the Brighton game or the Newcastle game last season, a 4-0 or a 5-1, and that could be the tipping point.
But there was 2 games
smashed by someone.
There was 2 games last year. I remember, like, clear. Yeah,
how was those?
Everton at home when we beat them 2-0 when Bowen scored, and then Nottingham Forest game. Like, it was like poor all the way up, and then he had 1 game to save his job, and he'd do it with the Everton game, and then it'd be poor again, and everyone would go, right, the Nottingham Forest game at home, we've got to win that one. And he'd go and win that one, and then it was the Man United game that sort of sealed the deal for us, really. And then we managed to sort of claw ourselves over the line. I agree. Like, I'm a bit nervous about Moyes signing players. I'd rather like Tim do it, really, like, because like you've got to look further than 1 year. Like, if you're going to sign players on a 3-year deal, Moyes might not be here. And if Moyes goes and signs 2 players and say they cost, let's just throw a figure out there, £40 million. That's £40 million that we've wasted on 2 players that a new manager might not want. Whereas if you're going for a style of play and you're going for like the Brighton model of data analysis and all that with this new technical director, I would have more faith with him buying the players for the long term rather than David Moyes which could be a year, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we do things the wrong way around. I mean, we do it the old school way. Whereas, you know, you bring in the manager and the manager decides which players that are there he fancies and which he doesn't. You get rid of the ones he doesn't fancy. You bring in players he does fancy. I think that's antiquated now. I don't think you can run a football with the kind of money you're paying for players now and the kind of wages. I mean, players are a massive, massive investment now, and you just can't afford to do it like that anymore. You've got to have a director of football and a philosophy at the club of how this club plays its football. And you let that director of football build a team that where the players complement each other and they can all play the way they're supposed to play for that club. And then you hire a manager for whom that style of play is suited. I mean, it just makes more sense. It's much easier if it doesn't work out to just fire the manager and try a different manager who plays that way as well, rather than constantly trying to rearrange your team around a manager who prefers a different way of playing. It just makes no sense in the 21st century to do it that way. And hopefully what we're seeing with this appointment of Tim Steidman is a change of direction, that we're finally modernizing the way we arrange the club.
It is, but I think it's a slow change of direction. So and when you're doing a slow change of direction, you're not doing everyone at the same time. it's sort of a halfway house. Do you know what I mean? So you've got to hope Moyes has to be adaptable to this new change. If the change is going to be slow, they don't think they have to do it quick and get rid of Moyes, and then actually get a manager in who's comfortable with this. But as I say, it's still a little bit shy of it, because it's not the full continental system, because we've got a chairman, not a president. So he also has to change his role and be a little bit more flexible, Sullivan as well. So it's going to be really interesting. Do you know what? No, I'm pleased we're trying. Because actually, there'd be one thing worse than this. That'd be no director of football coming in, and then Moyes just being allowed. I think that, with a year left on his contract, Moyes being allowed to spend the Declan Rice money all on his own without being overseen. I think that would.
Yeah, I'd imagine, what happened last season, given the backing that Moyes was given last summer. You got Newman, the man he wanted. We got him in for you. We've backed you massively in the transfer market.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of money on these players that you wanted, and we know these are Moyes' players because
and some worked
with him. Yeah. And the fact that it hasn't worked out in the Premier League, that we've had a very poor, and could, as you say, Gonzo, we could have gone down. We really could have, which would have been an absolute disaster given the money we'd shelled out. And so I think that probably has been the large prompter for Sullivan to say, right, I'm not doing this again. I'm just not giving you that kind of control over transfers again, and giving you that much money to spunk.
I hope he would have said that. And I cannot believe for a second that someone that's made that much money in business doesn't have enough grit about him to say that. I'm assuming he's done a lot of deals over his life, Sullivan. I bet he's been involved in some right old deals. And I would expect during that time he's had to speak frankly, and he's had to have harsh words and cross words. And I would hope, regardless of, irrespective of what we think of Sullivan, that he's got enough about him that he could say exactly to Moyes what you've just said to him there, and say all of that. And for that reason, Moyes, I cannot give you full control of the finances. You cannot, as much as Paqueta, absolutely lovely, wonderful. But and Kera in the end, came good, and a good bit of a mixed bag, wasn't it? But what we can't have is be spending 35 minutes back, another 17 on 55. And then the best part, I would suggest, about between 65 and 70 million on Cornet, Scamacca and Flynn Downs. You cannot be spending nearly 70 million pounds on players that are not going to work out. We're West Ham, we're not Man City. We cannot afford to waste 70 million pounds. And I think that's the sort of conversations he would have needed to be having.
Yeah, and I think as well, he was in a position to do it this summer. I think Moyes was not in the position of strength at the end of last season that he had been in previously. There was a time when Moyes was in a very strong position of strength. We'd finished 6th and 7th, got into a semi-final of Europa League. And so Moyes was in a very strong position. Sullivan would have been saying, "Jeez, I don't want to lose Moyes. His job he's doing. Don't want him walking out the door." So he acceded to a lot of Moyes' demands. I think the tables kind of turned by the end of last season.
Good point. Yeah,
I think because we'd had such a horrible season in the Premier League, and because Moyes had really been a very, very lucky boy to still have been in charge by the end of the season. I think Sullivan realised, okay, Moyes knows now that I'm in a kind of more of a position of power, or at least that was a perception. I mean, the chairman should always be the person in position of power, but the perception was that Moyes didn't quite have the same position of strength. I don't think Sullivan would have cared particularly if Moyes had said, "I'm not putting up with this, I'm leaving." He'd have said, "Okay, bye."
Yeah.
See you later. And Moyes knew it. And so Moyes either had to go along with it or pack his bags. And not surprisingly, he's decided to just go along with it, thankfully. And hopefully it'll work out for everybody.
I think like, just to say this, I think Moyes has got to prove something to the owner now. And he's got to prove something to all the fans. Like, he's got to earn that sort of extension. Like, if anything that he's got to do this season, if West Ham are going to give him a new contract or an extension or something in the future, then he's got to earn it. Like, if he don't earn it, then he won't last the season, basically. Do you know what I mean? If we go the way we went last season, he won't last till Christmas. And if it ends up being the same old stuff again, I think they will run his contract down, let him go, but they haven't got to give him no compensation. So he's got to earn it this year. Do you know what I'm saying? And honestly, he's a lucky man to still have a job. He should have been gone a long time ago. But
Well, I actually think if it comes down to it, we can sack him early. We could sack him in October. The reason being, when you sack him out, you don't just pay off the rest of the whole of his contract.
No.
You continue to pay his monthly wages until such time as he picks up another job.
Exactly
And
right.
I think if we were to sack Moyes, say in October, I think the first team that's banging trouble at the bottom of the table and decides to sack their manager, I think the first phone call they make is to David Moyes.
Mm. Yeah. And he ain't got any coaches that got to be paid off either.
There you go. You know what I mean? At this rate, it's like us three will be managing West Ham, right? You know what I mean? Gonzo could be the manager.
Yeah. Listen, gentlemen, we'll leave it there. We've been on for about an hour and a half now. Look, I really appreciate you both jumping on. Always love to hear your opinions. It's always better for me as well to have someone else to bounce ideas off of and opinions.
I'm sorry, Tommy. I'm sorry. I keep letting you down, mate. Fridays are busy for me, mate. So I do apologise. It's been really
no
nice
problem.
To
I understand you're in high demand, Gonzo.
Well, it's not so much that. No kids Friday night. Got a lot of stuff to get on, but thank you, mate.
I really appreciate you jumping on. I know you jump on whenever you can, Gonzo. And also, James, cheers, mate, for jumping in as well. Always nice to talk to you. As always, if either of you need me, I'm actually off work for the next little while. I've done my back in. So, unbelievably painful.
Sorry, mate.
Yeah, so...
Is that why you're stuck in the kitchen?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. Fucking hell, I just felt that. I'm sitting in one of those office chairs that has the
right. Keep upright.
I'm actually starting to feel it now, so I'm going to have to move before my back locks up or something. But anyway, look, if either of you need me, you know where I am. Just give me a shout. I'll always happy to help you out when needed as well. Also, to everyone in the chat and everyone watching, really appreciate you being here. It means a lot to me, and hopefully you can join me again next week. We'll probably have, hopefully, some positive things to talk about next week. Maybe a couple of signings if we're lucky. But we'll speak about those next week. But until then,